I started. I'll let you introduce yourself and tell your story, because I think everyone has a story, and everyone's story is powerful. And yours, I think, is very powerful and different. So tell us a little bit more how you got started looking at addiction and your journey. So just go ahead.
Thanks so much, Nathalie. So my story is that at the age of 15 years old, I tried alcohol for the first time. And as soon as I tried alcohol, it was like everything changed for me. I loved the way it made me feel. All of a sudden, it made me believe that I could be who I wanted to be and act the way I wanted to act. And I just really knew that this was my thing. And then I just continued on a journey of drinking until I was 29 years old. And I had had some issues in my life that had come up during that time. Not any health issues, but I had had, some struggles with, with the law and different things that had come up from my alcohol use. And at 29 years old, I got a DUI. So I was charged with a DUI. And I knew in that moment that I absolutely had no choice but to admit that I was an alcoholic. I don't use that term anymore. But at the time, I knew it in my soul. I knew that I had to get rid of alcohol in my life. I knew that it was at the root of all of my problems, and it was holding me back in my life. And it just became very clear in that moment, in the back of a police car and then sitting in a holding cell for an entire night. So it was an awful experience, one that I wouldn't want anyone to go through. And if anyone out there is struggling with addiction, just know that I understand, and I understand the shame. And the shame is really what kept me stuck for so long, because it wasn't even just the shame of knowing that I could no longer drink alcohol normally with my friends and be normal, but then it was the shame of being sort of sober and knowing that I, had to live in this new life. And I just didn't want to admit to anybody that I had had any issues with alcohol. I pretended to everybody, many of my friends, even some of my closest friends. I told them that I quit drinking just simply because I had seen the light and I decided to start focusing on my health. And a lot of my friends were like, well, that seems really weird, but whatever. And I basically just cut off some of those relationships because they were toxic. They were really just drinking buddies, if I'm being honest. And so I just knew that that's what I had to do. I knew that I had to just completely change my life. And that meant eliminating toxic relationships. It meant that I had to, because of my DUI, I had to quit my job. I had to sell my car. I had to move across the city because I had decided to make this whole puzzle seem to make any kind of sense, because I was not telling anybody the truth, that I would go back to business school. And I told everyone that this was a dream that I had had. It wasn't really a dream that I had had, but I decided that it would be a dream that I would then fulfill. And so I spent 3 years at college in business school, and it was a phenomenal experience. But even still, I was at school not telling anybody the truth. Like, everyone's going out to the pub and I'm saying, oh no, I'm just going to study. And, I'm not interested in going out. I don't drink. I'm super healthy. I'm going to hit the gym, or I'm on a cleanse, or whatever other lie I was telling. But then I was actually going and doing those things, because I realized if I was going to keep this guise up, if I was going to keep this lie up, that I was now a super health focused person, I would actually have to go and do that. And so what happened is, the night after I got my DUI and I was at my then boyfriend's house, in the fetal position, could not believe what my life had become. The very next night, I found myself at the grocery store in the ice cream aisle, and he and I both just picked out our favorite tub of Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And this was not something that I had done as a drinker. I was somebody who avoided sugar for the most part. I didn't put it together that I was drinking my sugar, but so I really didn't, I was able to say no to dessert. It wasn't a big deal for me. And all of a sudden, it's like the day after I quit drinking, and my body was just like, where is the sugar? And it just was craving. And of course, now that I understand addiction better, I understand that was, my brain saying, we need this. Where is it? First of all, there's a habit component of wanting the drink, which I wasn't allowing myself to have. So I had to come up with ways to create that dopamine rush that I knew my brain was looking for. And of course, my body started craving refined sugar. So we found ourselves in the ice cream aisle. We both brought a tub of Ben and Jerry's home, and I just sat in front of the TV with a tub and a spoon and ate the entire thing. And after a few nights of this in a row, eating the entire tub and sort of feeling justified, kind of like, you know, I'm not drinking anymore. So why wouldn't I just eat whatever I want? I'm going to eat all the sugar. Who cares? What's the difference? But I kind of realized, wow, if I'm going to keep up this guise of being this really healthy person, I'm not going to be able to keep doing this. I can't keep this up. It's really inauthentic and incongruent. And I wanted to feel more like a fully integrated human. And I was really feeling like I was living a really big lie and a double life. And so that's when I kind of started on my quest to learn more about nutrition and wellness and fitness. And I started to uncover what I could do to stop all of these insatiable cravings for sugar. And so I'll share those tips at the end. I think we're going to get to that. And so that's really the protocol that I created in my life that has then 16 years later basically just become my lifestyle, is really these the tips that I'll share, some of them that I'll share. But really at the end of the day, I have to say, and this is really the crux of the work that I do with my students, is it's getting underneath the reasons why I drank in the first place.
Yeah.
I had to get underneath all of that pain because, as we know in addiction, it's not the addiction. Like, that's the symptom, right? Like, there's a problem, there's pain underneath, and we're using alcohol, drugs, sex, pornography, shopping, sugar to numb that pain. And so when I looked back at my life, I created life maps. I started doing that really early on in my recovery. And I looked back at my life and I could see that at about 7 or 8 or 9 years old, I used to sneak chocolate. I used to go downstairs. My parents entertained a lot. I lived in a family that really, romanticized and glorified alcohol. And my parents would entertain a lot, and they would often get hostess gifts of chocolate. And my mom would put them down in the freezer because we just didn't eat that stuff. I'm very grateful and so lucky to have been raised by a mother who definitely put healthy food on our plates every single day. I know you were mentioning in another interview I saw you in that you were raised on Joe Louis
and Coke. And I don't know if Joe Louis are just a Canadian thing, but, basically processed cake. So, yeah. And I thank you for bringing the point that there are other addiction, and food being one of them. And, I heard you saying, you felt like you led a double life and you were making excuses. And I think, that I suffered from anorexia and bulimia growing up. So I can totally relate. So for me, it wasn't alcohol, but it was food. So I think, first of all, thank you for sharing your story and being so authentic, because I think I hope that a lot of people are listening and, hearing what you're saying and looking to see if there are things in their lives that they're not congruent with, and also not feeling that shame, because, first of all is the awareness and how it's impacting your life. And for you, it was a rude awakening. We don't wish that upon anyone, but sometimes that's what a person needs to, to wake up. And you're so right that we glorify food, we glorify alcohol. I guess the difference between food and alcohol is we do need food to survive. Alcohol is not a necessity, but I think from a mental point of view and a mindset point of view, they cross quite, they're very similar. So thank you so much for sharing that story. So you've been working to heal yourself. And I think, everyone that I talk to that is in health, we had to figure things out for us to heal ourselves. And when I do webinar, I do share my story in great length, and I needed to figure stuff out for me. And then it became a passion, because for me, is I wanted to be that resource that I didn't have. And I'm sure with you, that's also what drove you to reach out and help others. So how do you help others? And when people first, let's say contact you or start, working with you, and they say, hey, I think I have an addiction, that it is alcohol or sugar. What do you do with your clients, Sarah, to dig to find those why in the first place?
That's such a great question. And that really is the meat of the work that I do. As you know, I wrote a book called The 28-Day Kick the Sugar Challenge. And that came about because I thought I was writing my memoir, and I started writing my memoir, but going into those deep, heavy, dark, painful stories, all of a sudden I started reaching for sugar again, even after years of being in a healthier lifestyle. So I heard you on another podcast mentioning that your eating disorder is sort of always there. And my addiction is sort of always here too. With alcohol, it's easier in a way. It's just like you say, you can just, I don't need alcohol to survive. Like and so for me, it's just a decision. It's a non-negotiable. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that there aren't times that I look at a glass of wine and sort of, and then it's over. Those things do come up. But with food, like you were saying, this is not something that we can avoid. We need to eat at least, 3 times a day. We have to, create a healthier relationship with food. And so what I often will share with my students is it is not about the food. Yes, in my program, we work through learning about food and learning the power of nutrition and really fueling ourselves with what we need to survive, both from our mental health and our physical health, our spiritual health, our emotional health. But really and truly, it's about getting underneath the reasons why we were using food to soothe our emotions. And that's what happens with addiction, is that we are using outside substances to heal an inside job. And so we really have to get to the root of it. So life mapping, like I was saying before, I really started looking back at my life and seeing, where did all of this start? Where did all of this start for me? And like I said, I could kind of pinpoint, wow, when I was a kid, I started using sugar and I didn't even know it. I didn't even think of it. And at 15 years old, when I took that first drink of vodka with my friends on Halloween, they were all trick-or-treating for sugar, which I probably would have been interested in too. But I was drinking vodka with my friends for the first time. And gone went the sugar interest. It was like all about alcohol from then on. And then as soon as I quit drinking, back came the sugar. So it was like, I really needed to figure that out. So I started writing the 28-day Cook the Sugar challenge, because I was like, all of a sudden I'm back to wanting to eat sugar again to soothe these hard feelings. And so it's always there in the background. We always have to be managing it and looking at it, but it gets easier and easier and easier as we create habits and as we create those neural pathways in our brains, which I know you know all about, and create those protocols and rituals in our life that then can become the easy buttons. Whereas for right now, a lot of my students, the easy button is hit the takeout, grab the drive-through, order the pizza, don't do the meal prep, don't exercise, don't drink water, don't get their rest. Like, that's kind of the way that life is. And what drives me so crazy with so many people in the world is that we all want the pill, the easy button, to look great, feel our best, age beautifully, feel really good. And yet we won't drink water. We refuse to eat vegetables. Like Sarah tell me to do anything else, but I hate vegetables. It's like, it doesn't work. We have to understand that food is nourishment, and we are overfed and undernourished. And we have to get to the root cause of why it is that why we're using these outside substances to heal this pain. And we also need some education as well. And I think that that's what's so important with the work that I do with my students is we get underneath that pain. And then we also, on top of it, layer on healthier habits that are going to help them to feel better all the way through the process. So it's really multi-layered.
It's funny that you got revved up a little bit, because usually the first thing I start with the podcast is what in your industry makes you go, what the heck, you know? And I think you just basically answered that. And I think one thing that I'm seeing with patients and with society is that we're a quick fix. Like even if my laptop is not loading up fast enough, we're impatient. Everything is quick. But we forget that I don't care how smart computers are becoming, and I don't care how much we think we're understanding, our genome, is that the body takes time to heal, and it is all about food that is going to heal us. I'm all about above, down, inside out. Above down means from the brain to the communication to the rest of the body, and inside out means not outside in, from outside substances to heal us. So I think it's become that way because of the fast pace of our society. And then on top of that entitlement. And I'm sure you hear that often with people. Oh, I don't want to cut my wine, or I don't want to cut this. I deserve it. I earned it. And by golly, we all work hard. But again, it's that relationship with our food or whatever. It may be some people, it's smoking. I mean, there's a repertoire of addiction. But, I think both makes us go, what the heck? And I think as soon as people realize that, I say to patient, you break a bone, I do not care if you are the Queen of England, it's not going to heal faster. There are limitations of the body. And once we start thinking this way, I think it makes it easier for people. And then you just pick one habit at a time. And that's why I wrote the book and called it Hack Your Health Habits, because I knew oftentimes that people knew what to do. They were just not doing it. I'm like, why? And people feel overwhelmed. There's so much information out there that I'm sure you hear that often with your client, right?
Oh my gosh, there's so much information out there. It's information overload. One day we're supposed to eat this, we're supposed to drink celery juice. The next day it's like it's ridiculous. The next day we're all doing a ketogenic diet. The next day it's crazy. It's overwhelming. And I think that we can really, do a disservice to people by sometimes just overcomplicating something. I really love I'm going to be mentioning some quotes that I like, but one of them that I love is by Michael Pollan. And his sort of mantra is eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And so he's not saying no meat. He's not saying no animal products at all. People often get stuck on that mostly plants thing. But it's eat food, meaning real food. It's not too much. Don't get stuffed at every single meal. And mostly plants. Let's remember that our vitamins and minerals come from fruits and vegetables. I want to answer a comment that I know came in about life mapping. I don't want to go too far ahead. So
you're better than me to keep track of the comments. Thank
awesome. My pleasure. So, and sorry for not making that clear. So life mapping is basically where you just I take usually 2 or 3, I'll grab some paper here. So I grab like 2 or 3 pieces of paper and I sort of just stick them together and tape them together. And then I start from the beginning, the day that I was born. And then I start drawing ticks and writing descriptions of maybe traumatic events that happened, something that was said to me, something that hurt me, an event that happened in my life, someone passed away, whatever it is. And usually it's trauma and we all experience trauma. And I don't know if anyone knows, I have a TV show called Real Talk with Sarah, and we did an entire episode on trauma, and no one is immune to trauma, and we need to heal it. We all need to heal our traumas, and they can be little t traumas, like the therapist was saying, or big T traumas, but we need to heal them. And so sometimes it's as easy as going back, looking at what happened in our lives, taking a bird's eye view and saying, you know what? Oh my gosh, this whole thing happened to me. And I just sort of brushed it under the carpet, but I didn't really brush it under the carpet. I've been drinking at it. I've been eating at it. I've been exercising at it. I've been having sex or shopping or whatever it is at it. And so the work that I do with my students early on in our program is to really heal the inner child. It's to really invite our inner child into the room, into our space. Everyone's on their own doing this on their own time at home by themselves, but they've done their life map. They've had a chance to take that bird's eye view, to take a look at different traumas that have happened or different events that have led them this way or that way. Like for me, of course, my DUI, could be, people could look at that as the worst experience of life. I look at it as the greatest blessing and gift I will ever be given. Mm-hmm. My addiction has been the greatest teacher of my life. Recovery, the greatest blessing. So we can look at all of these things and then we can try to heal them. You may want to go and see a therapist and do some work with them on healing, but certainly on some of the smaller issues or some of the things that you just want to look at and go, oh, that's when I started doing that. It can really help to make sense of things.
Yeah. And I think you and I are both business owner, and we do that with businesses once in a while to say, okay, slow down the press here. Let's, do, that it is a planning pyramid or whatever you use for your business planning. We don't do that with our lives. And I think looking at that is powerful. We do that from a health perspective with functional medicine when I work with patients. And you're right that the trauma are as important as a broken bone, or emotional trauma are as important as broken bone. So just want to ask the audience quickly if they suffer from any kind of addiction, and I know it's a private thing, but even if it's sugar, do you think that, you're craving that sugar and your relationship with food might not be healthy? Let us know, and maybe Sarah can also answer some question as well. So Sarah, my goodness, we could talk all day, but let's cover a few hacks or a few tips that, kind of common theme that you see with your student and your client that you do for recommendation. And we're going to go fast with those hacks, and most of them will be, body wise, but I think the first one would be to either get some help if you really, really need help. And I mean, we all do to a certain extent, but the awareness piece is first. So ask yourself this question: do you have a healthy relationship with all those things that can lead us to being addicted? So take it away with a few hacks that you tell your student, and what you see can really help people get results.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so absolutely, I agree with you with people who are feeling like they might want to share. The shame is what kept me stuck for so long. It kept me from getting the help that I needed. And yes, it's all kind of worked out 16 years later, but I didn't have to go through so many years of feeling so alone, so marginalized, so ashamed, so awful about who I was. And I really want people to remember that we are not our addiction. It's a part of us. It's a part of our, of our lives, but it's not the all of us. And so just to keep that in mind, that this is not a moral failing. This is crazy that we think that we are supposed to, without where alcohol is concerned, be able to consume a toxic substance, a neurotoxin, something that literally is made of ethanol, which fuels planes. We're supposed to be able to ingest this toxic substance day in and day out and keep up with our friends and not get addicted to this highly addictive substance. I can't swear, but it's crazy.
It is crazy.
It is crazy to me. And the same goes for sugar. If we look at the hallmarks of addiction, they are tolerance and withdrawal. We get them with alcohol, we get them with heroin, we get them with any drug, and we get them with sugar. Believe me, anyone that's done my 28-day Kick the Sugar challenge, you will know that there are some serious withdrawal issues. And I kind of love that right now we've got dry January, going a month without alcohol, and everyone's kind of jumping on it, and it's a cool thing. I encourage anyone, try doing a sugar cleanse. You don't have to do mine, but just take out refined sugar and junk food for even just 7 days. See how different you feel and see how sweet a banana tastes after a week. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. And it might just help you to recalibrate your taste buds a bit. But the first hack that I use with my students, number one, always first and foremost, every single time, protein, protein, protein. Protein helps us to satiate. So protein comes from anything, any animal product, of course. So any meat, any fish, any dairy, eggs, also vegetarian sources of protein like beans and legumes, lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, hemp hearts are one of my favorites, nuts and seeds. So we get protein in all of these ways. And what I recommend is at every single meal and snack, you want to see protein. So if you're looking at your snack, you have to ask it, where is the protein here? And if there isn't any, you need to get some in. I don't even mind if you still have the muffin or the cookie or whatever, but if you're having that, get some protein in with it because you want to make sure that you are slowing down the release of insulin. Otherwise, you're just going to go on that roller coaster of blood sugar craziness, the ups and the downs all day long. And that's how most people are living. They wake up in the morning, they drink coffee with cream and sugar, they have a bagel and they have, with jam on it. Then snack time, they grab a donut or a handful of M&Ms, and then lunchtime's a slice of pizza. And then this is all carbohydrate. So just being mindful, anyone that's watching that's not really sure what sugar is a carbohydrate. So whenever we are, just ingesting all of this sugar, our blood sugar is going up and down, spiking and crashing all day long.
I see this with female more than male. We seem to shy away from protein, which, we need to change. Give us another hack.
Number 2 is sleep. When we don't get 8 hours of deep restorative sleep, we crave carbohydrates. We crave sugar. If you've ever gotten a really crappy sleep the night before, you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm dog tired. Your body's saying, right, so go back to bed. You need to go to sleep. But you're like, but no, I need to drive to work. I have to go to a meeting. I have to do all of these things. So your brain is just like, well, if you're not going to let me have what I need, which is sleep, then I am going to require energy. And of course, our brains decide that the fastest source of energy is glucose, is sugar. So it's going to crave the muffins, the bagels, the cookies, the brownies. That's why on those mornings after having a bad sleep, that's what you're going to crave. So if you can, on those rotten mornings where you're tired, start your day with a high protein breakfast. I recommend that all days, every day for everybody. So definitely getting a high protein breakfast. And just a quick note on the protein, we're not talking a 12-ounce porterhouse steak every single night. We're talking 3 ounces of protein is enough. A little bit of cooked meat, 3 eggs, 2 or 3 eggs, a half a cup of chickpeas. So it's not crazy. The third hack I have is exercise. We want to feel as good as we possibly can. And if we want to boost our dopamine and feel really fabulous, that's our, the neurotransmitter that makes us feel so good, then we have to definitely do things to help boost it. So protein's one way to do that. There are all sorts of ways to boost your dopamine, but definitely exercise boosts those endorphins that make us feel so good. And it's just a great way. I know for me, if I've done a really good workout, I'm not really craving the sugar. Like I don't really want to have all the junk food after I've done a really good workout. So I exercise as much for my mental health as I do for my physical health, hands down.
Perfect. So Sarah, we're almost running out of time. So thank you so much for those tips. And, I'll add to the sleep. And every time that I have a guest on, we all default back. Well, it's not default. We all go back to basic with water, with the good proteins and fat, and with sleep and exercise. It's almost boring, because, where's the new biohacking method or whatever? And we're always going back to basic, which, is important for people to realize that as fancy as, you can, biohack yourself, it goes back to the basics. So before we stop the podcast or finish the podcast, Sarah, I always like to ask my guests their favorite quote, and so that they can share with the audience a piece of wisdom here.
Oh, I love this part of it. So I love Oprah. If anybody knows me, they know that I love Oprah, and her mentor was Maya Angelou. And so I love the quote from Maya that says, "I did then what I knew how to do. And when I knew better, I did better." And I think it really allows all of us to be mindful that we are not the people that we were even yesterday, last year, last week, 20 years ago. We've made mistakes in our lives. We've had issues come up in our lives, but when we know better, we do better. And so it's okay. We can again, honor that inner child, that younger version of ourselves. There's no right or wrong in life. We all have to go through things. And so that just is a really nice one. And then my other one, again, from an Oprah viewer, I don't know who said it, but I just remember watching one day and a lady got up in the audience and said, if you don't take care of the most precious gift you will ever receive, your body, then where else are you going to live? Mm-hmm. I love that.
Kind of a paraphrase of Jim Rohn's quote, actually. Take care of your body is the only place you have to live. And it's so true. So thank you so much, Sarah. And quickly, if you can give us your website. So if people want to find out more about you and what you do, they can go and have a look.
Fabulous. SarahTalksFood.com. I think it's behind me.
There you go. It's just easy enough. So thank you so much for being so authentic. And this is one thing, I respect you for many things that you are doing in your life, but authenticity, I think, is a trait that is being demanded more in our society of, the fancy lives that are seemingly looking perfect on Facebook. So thank you so much for being authentic. So this was Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the What the Hack podcast. I look forward to be on next week at 11 o'clock Friday as well. My guest is going to be Dr. Stephen Giannopoulos, and we're going to talk about brain health. We will be talking again a little bit about sugar, but Dr. Giannopoulos has a neurology background, so we're going to focus on how to keep our brain sharp as we age. So have a great week, everyone. I'm Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp, and this is What the Hack, the podcast that dives into what the heck is going on in the world of health and well-being, explores how to optimize your mindset and your lifestyle, and shares practical tools so that you can achieve your fullest potential. Join me and a special guest each week as we discuss everything from biohacking to diet personalization to cutting-edge detox methods to setting and staying accountable to your goals. Ready to find out what the hack you can do to stay healthy, sharp, and at the top of your game? Let's get started. This has been a Wellness on the Go production.